All right, so you guys are well aware that if this broadcast studio was one of the position group's meeting rooms, that somebody would be getting fined right now.
Why is that?
There's no Christmas tree. There's no holiday decorations
Why would you look
whatsoever.
At me? What did
There's
I do
nothing.
Wrong?
You're
There's
right.
nothing.
You'd probably be handing out the fines.
There's nothing that says decorations or the holiday
Scrooge.
season, 'tis the season, nothing in here.
Okay, along those lines, I realize every year, and then it comes back and it hits me hard in the face. I might be the worst gift wrapper of all time. I try and do it, and I know what I'm supposed to do, and it looks like it looks like it looks like my gifts were in a car accident every time.
It's worth the extra $3 or $4 per gift just to have it professionally wrapped. Is it not, Darren?
What? $3 to $4 per gift?
Well, that's why I just ordered a gift online. It was $3 to have it wrapped and then sent. No?
Just open up YouTube and look how to wrap a gift.
First of all, I don't have that. I didn't have that option with these. These are all like.
So usually it's not wrapping. It's just click wrapping. Click on the bubble and then boom, it's done.
I'm not good. My mom is really good at wrapping gifts, and all I learned from her is that the fewer pieces of tape you use, the better. She says you should not need more than 2 pieces of tape.
Oh, then I suck. I will say that I feel bad.
But if you just have more tape, just put a bow on it.
I feel bad for my wife because I get her to do everything that isn't her present because I don't want her to see what I got her. So now the only horrible wrapped gifts under the tree are for her.
What'd you get her? I won't tell her.
No, it's all a big secret.
See, Craig Greeley bought me a couple extra days because I like to take it down to the fourth quarter. I really work my best on deadline, running the no huddle at the very end, game-winning drives before the holiday deadline. And Craig Greeley said, well, why don't you just get your wife something in Chicago? You guys used to live there some 20 years ago. That's great.
Why don't you just bring her back some popcorn?
That buys me another 24 to 36 hours, right? Just bring it back on the plane.
You could just pick up like a Portillo's hot dog or Luminaldi's deep dish pizza here and tell her it's from Chicago.
No, that's right. Anyway, here's how it works with the rookies, okay? For example, on the Big Red Rage, Will Hernandez said Paris Johnson Jr. got fined twice in the O-line room. Number one, he was late putting up the tree. Number two, how dare he put up a tree and, according to Will, quote, there's no topper. There was no angel, there was no star, there was nothing to top the tree, which was deemed an offense and finable. And we came to learn over the course of the Big Red Rage that Will Hernandez is pretty much paying off his holiday credit card off the backs of the rookies and the fines he's been imposing because it's been pretty onerous at times. And then did you see the exchange last week between Budda Baker and Antonio Hamilton and the 3 rookies in the DB room, tasking them to put up a tree by the next morning by 6 a.m. before the first meeting?
Where would I have seen this?
Oh, it was going on right when the media was there. Antonio Hamilton and Budda Baker were giving Starling Thomas, Garrett Williams, and Keitrell Clark a hard time. Where's the tree? Better be up by 6 a.m. tomorrow before the first meeting. And then when I asked for an assessment the next day, they said, yeah, the tree was up, but I'm quoting them now, the veterans, they said, the tree has no spirit. Don't know what that means exactly, but apparently the rookie's underwhelmed in the DB room.
I don't like Darren getting the idea that he can walk around imposing fines on his colleagues.
So, by the way, I've been stripped of all decorating duties at Casa Calvisi. I've been told I don't have a good eye for where to put the ornaments.
I'm not judging. I'm just trying to keep up. You don't help with the Thanksgiving meal.
Oh no!
You don't decorate for Christmas.
Wait a minute. She's
you
keeping score.
You don't wrap the gifts for Christmas.
Well, the gifts are wrapped. It's better if I outsource it. Man's got to know his own limitations.
I'm not judging. I'm just trying to keep track.
You have to know your own limitations.
I think you're on track there, Danny.
I mean, if the gift is
Darren
wrapped,
is at least making brunch on Thanksgiving and trying to wrap his gifts.
I mean, let me ask you this much: if the gift is wrapped, if it's covered in wrapping paper, doesn't that qualify?
Yes.
Okay. One more question before we get too far into the football.
I mean, are we judging the precision in wrapping?
No, I would rather see the effort.
If it's a really large gift.
Did you get her a car?
No, I didn't get her a car. Those are stupid commercials. Nobody does that.
A car.
If it's a really large object, do you wrap it?
Yes, I think that's part of the fun. Unless it comes in a box.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a box.
Yeah, wrap the box.
But like it's a really heavy, gigantic box.
That's more fun if you have to really rip the wrapping paper.
Yeah, but how do you... I can't wrap a box this big. How do I wrap a box that big?
Then you know what? You just slap a bow on it.
There's a lot more tape involved there, Danny.
Just slap a bow on it and call it a day.
All right. Well, Making the segue.
I just needed to get that out there.
The Cardinals opened a can on the Niners' run defense. Didn't get the win.
Wow, went right positive, right out of the box.
Just right out of the gate. Thought I'd throw that in there because, Fred Warner looked a little discombobulated after the game, meeting the media. He had a smile on his face for a little while talking about the W, and then they brought up the fact Niners gave up 234 yards rushing, nearly 8 yards a carry. And, he was at a loss for words and explanation how exactly that happened. So I put it to you, Dani Sureck and Darren Urban. You're on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation. How do you explain a Cardinals run game that is now number 7 overall in the NFL?
Well, it's been impressive, especially this week. It wasn't just James Conner. Amari DiMercato looked good. Michael Carter didn't have a ton of yards. I think he finished with maybe 27, but he looked slippery. He was fast. He was twitchy.
Fresh legs.
Yes.
Slippery.
Kyler Murray had 49 rushing yards. It was a balanced run game, and I think that is important for the longevity of the success of this offense. Every time Arizona's had success offensively, they've run the ball well. Now, it helps that San Francisco was without 2 of their starting D linemen because of injuries. I would assume that running the ball was always part of the game plan, but once they realized that the 49ers were going to be a little banged up in that area, I'm sure it was really emphasized, especially when they started to find success doing that.
Yeah, you ride that hot hand until it's over, and 234 yards. Maybe one of Fred Warner's issues was the fact he lost Amari DiMercato in the middle of that play and just didn't do anything.
Or maybe he didn't have Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead in front of him, keeping Cardinals' old linemen off him.
It is interesting to me that as they knock the 49ers off the perch of the number 1 run defense, now they play the number 1 run defense for a second straight week in the Bears.
What are the odds of that? You're right. The Bears are number 1 in the NFL right now in run defense, and it's amazing what one premier pass rusher can do for your front seven, what Montez Sweat has done for the Bears. Their sack numbers have gone through the roof. It's once upon a time when the Cardinals were in dire need and they got Chandler Jones, right? And he was that guy that offensive coordinators had to account for day one of the game plan. So what would, just thinking out
loud.
What
is Chandler Jones doing these days? Sorry, what?
What would a Chandler Jones-esque pass rusher do for this Cardinals defense right now? Because everyone talks about, and we'll get into a little bit later, the receivers. Oh, geez, what would Marvin Harrison Jr. look like in a Cardinals uniform? What would he do for the offense? And I'm not debating that. I'm not negating that. But what would a premier pass rusher do for this Cardinals defense right now? They've gone 3 games in a row without a sack.
It would give them a pass rush, Paul. I don't mean to be facetious. There hasn't been pressure. It's more than just sacks. The quarterback hits, the pressures aren't there, and not just the way that you need them to, the way that we saw that room put up numbers to start the season. Now, they're obviously playing different teams than they were at the start of the year, and when you put on you have more film for opponents to look at, that changes things, right? The wear and tear of a season on your body, it's a whole list of things. They have just been almost non-existent when it comes to making life difficult for the quarterbacks they've been facing. I mean, Brock Purdy was under almost no pressure for most of the game, had another high completion percentage, just felt like he wasn't under any duress at all during the game. And I understand you don't have that elite pass rusher. You need to be able to get something out of the players you have, and for whatever reason, the last few weeks, it's been 3 games without a sack. They have not been able to generate anything.
What'll be fascinating to me is how you approach the pass rush scheming when it comes to Justin Fields, because you don't want a situation where you're going all out to go sack him and then he gets around you and then he gains 15 yards on a run. And so are they going to mush rush him a little bit more? Is that going to hurt the potential sacks? How exactly might that play out this week when they play in Chicago?
And that's a good point, too, with San Francisco, of how fast they get the ball out. You know that it's likely going to Christian McCaffrey. So that's obviously going to affect how many players you're dropping back and the type of pass rush you have. I'm just saying in general, it feels like the last couple of weeks, the quarterbacks have seemed to had a pretty easy time doing what they needed to do.
Kirk Cousins would always do that, right? Every time the Cardinals would play Kirk Cousins, you get the ball out so quick. You never had any chance of getting to him. A lot of those pass rushers would gripe and grouse about, oh, come on, the ball's out so quick. Matthew Stafford has done that to the Cardinals at times. Brock Purdy. And, to some degree, to listen to what the coaches told the media, that was part of the game plan. We're not going to go all out because the ball is going to be out quick. We're going to rush 3 or 4, drop 7 or 8. I get it, but the Cardinals still don't have that dominant sack guy. Dennis Gardeck is the leading sack guy, and he has some of the most limited snaps overall especially in pass rush situations this year.
Well, and the other thing about that is if you have a premier pass rusher, you can rush 3 or 4, and you still get some pressure and have all those guys back. That's the difference. Because right now, if you are limiting how many you send in, you're really limiting yourself. Whereas opposed to if you have that guy, maybe he can make some things happen, even if it's 3-on-5 or 4-on-5.
So the Bears gave up a second-round pick in 2024 before the trade deadline for Montez Sweat. And he has 6 sacks in 6 games. The defense has really solidified. And so, that was a win for the Bears. They
gave him a big contract, too, Paul.
They did give him a big contract. You're right. He was in a contract year. So they paid him, and gladly, based on what the return on investment so far. Now, as for Justin Fields, I had no idea that he was that big, that he's 6'3", 230. I didn't quite realize he's that big. And to hear guys talk about it, he will break tackles. And I looked it up. He ran a 4.44 at his pro day. So he's a legit 4.4 guy. Big arm, big athleticism. Of course, some of the other quarterback numbers haven't been too kind, and especially in the fourth quarter when you look at how the Bears games have fared, including blowing a 17-7 lead in the fourth quarter against Joe Flacco, who threw for 212 in the fourth quarter this past week, and the Browns pulled out a win somehow, some way, despite playing like their third-string left tackle and their second-string right tackle and a third-string center. They still were able to get a win against the Bears, who blew that one. But the Bears on offense have been struggling. Justin Fields, though, I'm very curious to see what he looks like. And Dani on the sideline, from field level, Justin Fields should be a sight to behold.
Yeah, if I can see him through all the rain.
Is it really in the forecast? You know me.
I think a little rain. No, I don't.
The
I know you don't. I don't think a lot of rain. You're going to be in the booth, nice and dry, Paul. So
the window will be open. He could get sideways rain.
Oh,
he could get some snow.
Poor Paul. No, there's not supposed to be snow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say something that you didn't want to hear?
No, it's fine. You know what? This is
that
part
the jacket
of it.
Is that the jacket you're going to wear, by the way, on the sideline?
No.
I've heard about that. You haven't heard about the jacket yet, Paul?
No,
that's not it.
This isn't even close to all the jacket
I'm very much looking forward
wearing.
to seeing the jacket.
You know what? I'm at least honest and upfront about knowing that I get cold easily. And so when I know it's going to be dark because the sun's going to set early and I know that it's going to be windy and there might be a little rain, you know what? I'm just going to over-prepare and would rather be warm in a coat than be miserable and cold.
I'm hearing she's going to have enough of an outfit that you are going to really have to raise your bar going forward, Paul.
I see.
That's every week,
So
Darren.
I'm getting the sense that this jacket has an aura about it. Does it have its own social media account at this point? Like, what's going on?
No. I don't know that
what is so remarkable about the jacket?
Well, now I feel like I'm hyping it up. I'll have to maybe post a picture. I don't know if this is the best way to describe it. It's definitely not the most appropriate way to describe it on a podcast. To me, as somebody who didn't grow up in the 70s, it gives off like 70s pimp vibes. Like it is a long, like almost to my calves long, thick, white, furry coat. It's got a big collar, big pockets in the front. Like it is...
You won't be able to notice her down there, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's too big to fit in my suitcase, so you'll see me wear it on the plane when it's 80 degrees in Phoenix as we board the plane.
I mean, with a coat like that, you got to walk down Michigan Avenue. That's a big city coat. You got to hit the Loop. You got to go over to Marshall Fields, Lord & Taylor's. You got to hit all the places. You give me the itinerary, Paul. You got to hit all the places, although a lot of those department stores are no longer there in Chicago. But
Dani will have to go get some dinner on Saturday night, so
it's good. Okay.
Probably not deep dish, but something else.
You got to find something. You got to eat.
I know.
What's got a bigger profile right now, the jacket or Trey McBride? That's what I want to know. There's my next segue for you.
I think Trey McBride might have gotten some mixed reviews online, Paul. I like it, though.
The nickname, not the player.
The nickname.
Yeah.
But I like it.
The player definitely exceeds the nickname. That goes without saying. But it might have made an appearance on EasyCardinals.com, Trey McBride. I love it. So, by the way, I did confirm here earlier on the Red Sea Report, I posed the question. Of course, Craig Grialou, can't spell Grialou without AI, had the info already. that since week 8, Trey McBride is number 1 in tight end receiving yards and receptions, and then number 2 in receiving yards. So after another 100-yard receiving game, Cardinals went, 34 years without a tight end hitting 100 yards receiving in a game, and he's now done it twice in 5 weeks.
Can he get the 278 yards in 3 games that he needs to get 1,000 yards?
Well, at this rate, definitely. I mean,
there's been,
if receivers are only going to generate 20 receiving yards per game, then yes, because he's the bulk of the passing game right now.
There has been one 1,000-yard season by a tight end in Cardinals history.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Jackie Smith didn't do it more than once?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Wow.
He had that one really big year with 1,200 yards. He had some really big years, but...
Well, McBride's first reception in Sunday's game was his 57th, which set a franchise record for most receptions by a tight end in a single season. It's been impressive what he's done.
Can he keep it up? Or do defenses now, especially with the receivers not exactly putting a big threat into coverages, is he at the point where he's going to get double-teamed almost every single passing situation?
Well, I would imagine so, because one of the best things about McBride's play is that he is very difficult to bring down on first contact. So I would imagine he'll probably start getting double-teamed because he's not going down with a single tackler on that first try.
I think he's going to be double-teamed, but if they continue to run the ball like this, I mean, you're not going to be able to focus as much on that.
And McBride is pretty good with those contested throws anyway, so I would say bring it on.
I mean,
he's going to get the targets. We know that.
Look at the first quarter alone of that 49ers game, right? I mean, he had the 38-yard grab against Fred Warner. Then they put Dre Greenlaw on him, and they actually gave help over the top, the bracket coverage, and that was where you had the deflection to Jeff Swaim because he was getting extra attention. And then later in the game, you had the pick 6. You can't tell me that Charvarius Ward, who's a corner, but he was back there sort of watching Kyler's eyes and going, yeah, he's looking for 85 again, and I'm going to jump this route deep.
I did watch that again, though.
And
if Kyler throws that ball as soon as Trey turns around, that's completion.
Gotcha. So and Kyler owned it after the game.
Yeah, he did.
He did own it.
It's too bad they didn't win, because we probably would have talked about that Jeff Swaim play a little bit more, where McBride kind of bobbled the ball behind the defender, and Swaim happened to be in the right place at the right time.
It was pass interference, Dani. Pass interference. It was pass interference, right? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I think so.
Him.
Yeah.
They didn't
accept it, right?
So the fact Kyler owned that, the fact that Kyler, when talking about the receivers, said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about it. Yeah, it's got to be better. I have to be better." How much more accountability are we hearing out of the quarterback this season, especially recently in these press conferences? He has not hesitated to evoke himself in taking some of the blame.
What I found interesting in his post game about taking the accountability was he seemed to understand that I'm going to take the responsibility and then just cut off my answer. You can take the responsibility and then kind of weave your way around it, and we're all waiting for as much information as we can get, but I think he seemed to understand that if I just say that's on me and leave it at that,
It's sort of an easy exit? Is that what you're...
Not just an easy exit, but you're not going to get yourself in trouble with anything else you say.
Right.
You took the blame like a quarterback does, and you move on.
And if you're taking the blame, there's really no need to give further detail and or name additional names.
Now,
right?
I will say this. I can't completely speak on what was supposed to happen or where everybody was supposed to be, but just watching the replay, like I said, it did feel like if Kyler gets that ball out sooner, and he had a very clean pocket on that play. That was the other thing I wanted to go back and look at. Was he under pressure? And he really wasn't. I mean, the pass protection has been pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. The times where he has been under pressure, there have been some breakdowns. There's no doubt about it. But there's also times where you're like, well, that ball easily could have been out. Should have been out a little earlier, and which leads you back to the whole receiver conundrum. So what is not happening, what needs to happen, is it realistic to think it'll improve significantly over these final 3 games? All we know is, you're not getting very much production out of your receivers at all, especially when you see Hollywood Brown standing on the sideline with a Nick cap on because he's got a sore heel.
Well, what's most concerning about that is that Jonathan Gannon said post-game he is concerned about Brown's heel, which has been nagging him for the last couple weeks. He went an entire week without practicing and left the game in Pittsburgh early and then left the game early against the 49ers as well. That makes me wonder if when you've only got 3 games left in the season, if he's gone 2 straight games not being able to finish, is IR a possibility, which we might find out if that's something that happens later in the week. If not, I would be surprised at this point if Brown even practices this week. When it comes to the lack of production from receivers, it's interesting to know where you put most of the blame there. It's great that you have a tight end like McBride who's able to kind of overcompensate for that, but you need to have receivers that are going to be game changers for you. To me, it comes down to you just don't have the personnel. You have the speed in Hollywood Brown. That's great. We're going to, let's assume at least this week he might not be able to play. You've got the size of Micah Wilson, who made his return after missing the previous 3 games with a neck injury. He wasn't non-existent. He's one of their better blocking receivers.
He played 65 snaps.
Right. In the past game, though, 0 catches. To me, that makes me wonder, was that more scheme because he's your only receiver of size? Zach Pascal's had opportunities, hasn't done anything with them.
Rondale Moore.
They seem to use Rondale Moore in a game, and then they don't really go to him again for the next couple of games because it seems like they're only using Moore on those long, deep shots or out of the backfield, and that's kind of it. And then you've got Greg Dortch, who will, if Brown doesn't play, will probably have a bigger role this week. To me, you just don't have the personnel at wide receiver, and I think that the start of the season, it seems like you did, and as the season goes along, it's been pretty glaring that, this, at least for me, this is creeping up to the top of my list in terms of dire needs in the offseason.
Yeah, a month ago, if you asked me about, go ahead and give your Pauly power poll of needs going into the offseason, I would have started with getting to the quarterback, an edge rusher, a 3 technique, D tackle. You got to be stout up front. I would have started with the defensive line. I would have thrown corner in there. If there's a Sauce Gardner type in the top 5, absolutely pull the trigger, but there really isn't supposedly in this draft. And then after that, I probably would have gone O-line, and receiver would have been 5th. But after these last few games, it does make you rethink things when you consider like the instant impact that Justin Jefferson had on the Vikings offense, the instant impact Jamar Chase had in transforming the Bengals, what Stephon Diggs did for Josh Allen when he went to Buffalo, and then Tyreek Hill going to Miami. When you think you get that guy, like those elite receivers, you add them to an offense, what can be possible, it does make it a little more intriguing. Marvin Harrison Jr., for example.
Don't disagree, but it was interesting. Both 2 of your 4 examples, the impacts that they had, the biggest impacts they had came long after they were drafted. Not Stephon Diggs had an impact in Minnesota, but not like he did in Buffalo. And Tyreek Hill ended up turning into really good in Kansas City, but they didn't know. I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick. He had off-field issues. Jamar Chase is a top 10 pick, but Justin Jefferson went 18, I think, something like that, 20. And you could be in a situation where you could still spend that first pick, whether it's 3, 4, 5, whatever, on something that's not a wide receiver. And in this very, very deep class of very good wide receivers, with that Texans pick at 18, 20, 22, whatever it's going to be, you could still get that guy. Now, whether he's ready to be that guy next year, I don't know.
Yeah, Rome Odunze out of Washington, who gets a lot of pub, and maybe it doesn't get nearly the same sort of spotlight as a Marvin Harrison Jr. But 6'3", runs a 4.35. The Washington receiver.
I mean, there again, from everything I've seen, as good as Harrison is, and he's the best out of this class, or will be when he announces. There are lots of really good receivers that you can get in the first 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah, first he might want to lose to Mizzou at the Cotton Bowl. To be determined.
You think he's going to play in that game?
To be determined. Even if he doesn't play, he's part of the team, Darren. Team first.
I have to say, as much as I'm chagrined to say this.
You're what?
I will say that Drew Lock won me over last night with his post-game interview.
M-I-Z. Sorry,
that
Paul.
I missed it.
The not last place Seahawks.
I was too frustrated with the Seahawks winning. There's just
the not last place Seahawks.
There's certain things I enjoy in the NFL. I enjoy watching Sean Payton lose. I enjoy watching the 12s lose. And so at the very end there, when the Seahawks pulled that out, I'm like, okay, click. I don't need any of the post, especially like that, in Seattle. I don't need any of the post-game euphoria.
I'm not a big Eagles dude. Never have been.
Yeah, Eagles will be in the top 5 watching.
They're starting to grate me the wrong way.
Especially
if I said that, I think my dad would disown me.
If what? If you said what? That you didn't like the Eagles?
No, the opposite.
Oh.
I don't even want to say it on the podcast.
Don't do it. I know he listens.
He does.
By the way, how intriguing is that Philadelphia road trip now with the Eagles struggling El Grande and having basically fired their defensive coordinator and put Matt Patricia in and all the turmoil.
I'm really excited to see how much Jonathan Ganon wants to talk about it that week.
Oh, well, we won't get anything out of him. I'm curious just the temperature in Philly. And I'm not talking about the sideline. I'm talking about Eagles fans who maybe didn't quite account for what they had when they lost Jonathan Gannon and have a newfound appreciation for their former defensive coordinator.
That's why I'm intrigued to see how he's received. We know that when he was hired by the Cardinals, there was nothing nice said about him coming off that Super Bowl loss and using him as the scapegoat and everything they were saying. It seems like, though, online at least, some of those Philly fans are realizing what they have lost. So but when they're faced with JG, do they forget about realizing what they've lost and they resort back to the stereotypical Philly anger? That's what I think will happen.
I don't want to chew up all our podcasts for next week, though.
Okay. Well,
just saying.
And look,
we're going to be coming off a Christmas holiday,
That's right.
and we're going to have to jam in our podcast with all these coaches talking next Tuesday.
Right. That is true. Okay. All right. So let me get back to the wide receiver issue because you have 3 games to figure this out. And if, for example, I'm Rondale Moore.
Same size.
Yeah, I did get run into by Rondale Moore.
It's still time to get cold, Darren. Jeez.
In this season of thanks, I do give thanks that it was Rondale Moore who hit me full speed on the sideline,
right.
And not Will Hernandez. Let me just say that. I do give thanks to the football gods this season that it could have been a lot worse. But like if I'm Rondale Moore right now, I have 3 games to put some film out there because it's going to be an off season of change. And once again, no allegiances from the new decision makers. And what did we hear going into last season? That Rondale Moore is a dynamic threat downfield. He's just not the line of scrimmage horizontal guy, but he's got a full route tree. So, I mean, they're looking, and now in the absence of Hollywood Brown, pending his availability, there is serious opportunity with 3 games to go for number 4.
And Hollywood Brown's in a contract here. There's just a lot of decisions that I think stem from what you want to do with Brown in the future. Because I think you need to bring somebody else in. Maybe that is a Michael Wilson if he can stay healthy to really allow Brown to do what he does best and be more of that 1A, 1B type receiver rather than a true number 1 receiver. He does give you that route tree. He gives you the speed. He gives you those things you want in that type of receiver. I just think you need another true number 1 opposite of him unless you think with Michael Wilson being healthy, he could be that supplemental piece. Realistically, do you need 3 small, speedy receivers? Now, Moore has a little bit of a different skill set being able to come out of the backfield the way that he does. Greg Dortch has been your receiver and has been playing well when his number has been called this season. So if you want Dortch to be your special teams guy, do you need Dortch and Moore if you're not really getting a lot out of Moore right now? To me, but again, if you decide not to sign Brown, you keep Moore maybe for the speed and those long balls. I just think there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. I really think they all come down to what you want to do with Hollywood Brown.
I thought this was interesting, and I was watching for the interception thrown to Ward when he was going to McBride, but watching that entire 4th down play. And you made me think of it when you brought up Greg Dortch, who I think has really performed well when he's gotten the opportunities. But we've heard from 2 different coaching staffs about inconsistencies, right? And then I watched that play. It was 4th and 3. I believe it was Hollywood. Hollywood and Dortch ran crossers near the line to gain, and then Trey McBride was beyond that, right? But when Dortch ran his crosser, he was like 1.5 yards inside the line to gain. Like he wasn't. And it reminds me of Houston where he wasn't. And I'm like, I looked at that and I don't know. But like when I hear coaches saying you need to be more consistent, is that one of those things like, man, we're going to need 3 yards and you go out and you're running 1.5 yards downfield, 2 yards downfield. Like that's the kind of stuff that you just can't do. And I wonder sometimes if when they talk about consistency, if that's the kind of stuff they're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure. Look, to me, I just respect the style and intensity that Greg Dortch plays with.
Agree.
When you exist on the edge of the roster your entire career, you play with that edge. And he has that in games, which I just enjoy watching. And his ability to make guys miss, just ridiculous. When you get him the ball, that punt returner in him comes out. He's making guys miss, and he's dodging and all the head fakes and everything. You get back to a Hollywood Brown. It was interesting to hear him tell the media last week in front of his locker that he's at peace with his season. Even though the numbers aren't there, the production isn't there, he knows that he's been winning on film. Now, a lot of it had to do with pre-Kyler and 3, 4, maybe even 5 deep shots that easily could have been touchdowns, and they didn't connect, and balls were overthrown or thrown out of bounds. But on film, so to get back to your point, Dani, in the offseason, what do you do if you're an NFL team and Marquise Hollywood Brown is a free agent? The numbers aren't there. What sort of numbers is he going to want in the paycheck department, contract department? But is his value suppressed by the fact he didn't have those numbers and stats? But if you're an astute GM, you watch the film. You watch every game this year. He's winning on film.
He was winning on film. And I think that's part of the reason why his stats don't reflect the type of season he's had, is not to put the blame on one person. The connection with Josh Dobbs was not there, and the throws were not accurate enough or didn't have enough power to reach him. That's why I'm saying I would like to see Hollywood Brown come back. I would think it would make more sense at this point of maybe you do a 1-year prove-it deal, just because he was dealing with an injury last year as well, and this heel that's been nagging him. And again, the changing of quarterbacks this year, maybe they come to an agreement of maybe this is where Brown wants to be with Kyler and where this organization is heading. And maybe it ends up working out nicely for both parties of you have like a prove-it deal and you go from there.
I've talked to Hollywood before, and he does really like this coaching staff, and I do think if he was given the choice, he would prefer to stay here. I don't know what's going to happen with this contract situation. I do know if you start talking about prove-it deals, usually if you're a guy doing a prove-it deal, you want to be in a position where you know you're going to be able to put up big numbers. You've got Trey McBride here now, and the reality is they're probably going to go draft a receiver high. So are you going to get those kinds of opportunities to prove it, quote unquote, and get another big contract? I don't know. I mean, these are the questions that every player has to ask himself.
I'm also curious to know with Michael Wilson not having a catch. I believe he had maybe 3 targets.
It was 3 for him and 4 for passing.
Is that how the game was unfolding? Is that the game plan? Because with his size, you should be able to throw the ball his way, and he should be able to win those battles. That's the question I have, is why are you not forcing it? Why are you not finding Wilson and making sure that he's the way you're going if he's open enough for a contested throw?
Especially the game he had against the 49ers in week 4.
Exactly, 2 touchdowns.
But he was, hadn't played in, a month, so was there a rust factor
First
at work?
game with Kyler too, right? Second game.
Second game with Kyler.
Second game with Kyler.
I think he was able to play. He missed 3 and then came back for 1, right? Or missed 1 and then came back and then missed 3, whatever it was.
There's all these ridiculous Brock Purdy stats. Here was one that on throws outside the numbers, he's 11 of 17 this year for 168, 3 touchdowns. This is outside the numbers, and that's missing right now from the Cardinals pass game. Most of the production seems to be coming in between the numbers,
which is hilarious because if you remember the last couple of years, everybody was complaining about how all the Cardinals did was throw outside the numbers and there was nothing down the middle.
And so you finished my thought,
my bad.
No, that's good. I mean, we got a 2-man game going here. It's good. This, we're in sync here. But wouldn't Michael Wilson be that guy? Because when you're throwing outside the numbers and you're throwing to 5'8" Rondell Moore, Greg Dortch, Hollywood Brown, even, the odds just are significantly reduced as opposed to you're throwing to 6'2" Michael Wilson towards the numbers. He's that guy who can reel in that catch, and you have more of a target area that you can throw to if you're Kyler Murray. So I just, to finish that thought on Michael Wilson, more targets outside, please, because he seems to do a real good job with his size of getting between the DB and the football.
I would have to see what the receivers are doing and what options they had, and did Kyler have opportunities? I do know this. I don't think not throwing to the wide receivers is why they lost to the 49ers. They did score 29 points. And as Jonathan Gannon made the point, like in game, when you're moving the ball like they're moving, you're thinking we got to score in the red zone and not turn it over. You're not thinking, oh, man, the receivers don't have any catches. And I'll be honest, I didn't think much about it either until late in the game, because why would you?
Yeah.
And again, when you have a receiver, not a wide receiver, but a receiver like McBride who's able to be reliable and reel those catches in, I would understand why that's not top of your mind.
I mean, the outcome of the game, you just can't make that many mistakes against the 49ers and have a realistic shot at winning. You can't throw the pick six. You can't leave two receivers wide open, in assignment or alignment errors or whatever it was. They left Christian McCaffrey wide open on a 41-yard grab where he falls down and gets up. And
they were lucky they didn't lose any of those 5 fumbles.
So, nothing bounced your way. So the way things played out, if they would have got one of those breaks, maybe there's something different, or at least it's a much closer margin. But you got to figure out the 49ers. They've won 12 straight games in the division. Brock Purdy isn't going away. He's 8-0 in the division in his career now against the NFC West with 19 touchdown passes and 2 picks. He's a problem for the division. So you got to figure this out. Because like we talked about last week, I'm not sweating the rest of the NFC playoff picture. A bunch of teams that are around 500. I mean, Cardinals can get there next year and be a playoff contender. I think the big question for me is going into next season, as they add more talent to this roster, is just, okay, how do you compete against your division, in particular the Niners and Rams?
It's interesting. Look, I haven't been covering an NFC West team nearly as long as the two of you. It seems like every other team has really found a stretch of success. Seattle has had a stretch of success. The Rams, maybe not as long, but had a little bit of, they were powerful. Now it seems like the 49ers. It's just the 49ers are the standard you are trying to reach. But this division as a whole, it seems like the Cardinals need to consistently not just stringing games together in a season, but start stringing seasons together of truly being competitive. If you're looking for a bright spot, Arizona was competitive for the first half. Just the further the game went on, the further San Francisco ran away with it. I think a lot of that was their own errors, talking about penalties or, the interception, the pick six, and then you move on to the defense you were talking about, Paul, the Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey wide open touchdowns. But I like that this team was competitive. I like the decision to go for it on 4th and 3, obviously not the decision that it ended in a pick six, but knowing you're going up against this potent offense and you're going to have to put points on the board and you're going to have to do your part. So I'm overall, I'm okay, right? Like, I think there were some good spots you saw from this offense and the defense, and then it just kind of, I think to a certain extent, the 49ers are also just that good. Because really, besides Christian McCaffrey, who was their leading rusher and receiver, none of the other offensive players really killed you. It was explosive plays. It was a 35-yarder to George Kittle. It was a 22-yarder to Brandon Ayuk, right? Christian McCaffrey had a 19-yard run. So it was really just Christian McCaffrey who was the main guy who really just kind of messed you up.
They had like 20 less plays than the Cardinals. I mean,
their scoring drives went by in a flash.
But see, that's the difference right now in the two offenses. The Niners have that big play capability, the big strike, the 4-play, 70-yard touchdown drive. They have that. The Cardinals don't. When the Cardinals get into the end zone, it's usually 10, 12, 15 plays. They don't have that big strike, big play.
And getting stalled in the red zone. That was something that Kyler talked about postgame. Both teams had 6 scoring drives. It's just that the Cardinals struggled to find the end zone consistently. It was having to go to a lot of field goals.
It was funny because when they went on the pick six, which of course was a 4th and 3, I had a lot of people complaining that they were even going for it, and I'm like, you've got to score touchdowns. You can't be punting the ball away to this team. You're going to give up points. I had no problem with them going for it there. Obviously, you want to see them execute it, but I had no problem with them making the choice to go for it there. And the funny thing was, I actually had somebody bring up kicking field goals in the red zone instead of trying to get touchdowns late in the game. And before I could say anything, somebody else chimed in on Twitter and said, well, wait a minute. Like 3 weeks ago, everybody was complaining that Jonathan Ganon was going for it too much and not kicking the field goals. Now he's kicking the field goals, and now you're doing it wrong. I mean, again, you can't win.
By the way, the stat on Matt Prater right now, after that 58-yard surface-to-air missile, in his last 18 games, he's now 13 of 15 from 50-plus. Think about that, right?
It's almost like I feel a little jaded when I see Prater going out there and the special teams unit going out there for a 58-yard field goal, and it's not like, oh, let me perk up a little bit and see if he's able to pull this off. I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, let's see. Which I know is not great. You should not get used to that, right? Yeah. A lot of teams don't have that luxury. It's just what Prater has been able to do so consistently here in Arizona and throughout his career.
Okay, here's the non-bet bet.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to bet, Darren.
Does not even a whole paycheck?
No.
Does Matt Prater kick a field goal of at least 53 yards in either of the next 2 games?
Yes.
Ooh, with weather?
Yes.
I think they're going to let him try it. He's going to want to. I say yes.
Okay.
And here's the thing about him. He's been in the league long enough. He knows all the wind patterns in all the stadiums. It's ridiculous.
I believe that.
It's like, okay, here we're going to the meteorologist update desk with Matt Prater, and he'll tell you exactly about the wind shear and where it's coming out of each end zone and which flags he's looking at. You know, like in Cleveland, he looks at what he calls the Phil Dawson flag. Phil Dawson put a flag up in one corner of the end zone. He doesn't look at the top of the goalpost, so he looks at the top coming off and so that's what he'll look at. He has that sort of innate knowledge now after 2 decades in the league.
Prater honestly has made a great case for himself to go to the Pro Bowl.
Oh, heck yeah.
There are a couple players, but I think he and Trey McBride probably arguably the most likely to go from the Cardinals, which if you agree, you can go vote on azcardinals.com, or I think social media voting is still open if you use the hashtag Pro Bowl vote with their name. Just go to the Cardinals Twitter and retweet.
I think the problem with McBride at this point is going to be he's probably going to have to get in as an alternate. I don't see him being above Kittle or Hawkinson or Laporta, who's had a great year with Detroit. I don't know what all the kicker situations are in the NFC, especially.
That Dallas kicker gets a lot of
Brandon
run.
Aubrey.
Yeah, you mean because he hasn't missed a field goal on like 28 tries?
I mean, he's good.
Yeah.
He's good. I don't know his numbers.
Rookie season?
Yeah, I don't know how his numbers compare, but he had that primetime game where he hit a couple of 50-plus yarders, right? So he got a lot of attention with that. So, but I still love the B.J. Ojulari on Big Red Rage last month, and Wolf asked him, who's the baddest dude in that locker room? And Ojulari immediately answered, Matt Prater. He's got that look of an assassin. He's just this cold look all the time, locked in.
Do you ever wonder, because we know how the locker room is laid out and the outside linebackers are on that side where the kicker is and everything. Like, do you ever wonder, like, in those kinds of circumstances, like, B.J. Ojulari is much more likely to say Matt Prater because they're in that, like, they're in the same neighborhood. But like if you ask somebody on the other side, it would, you know what I'm saying?
That's a good experiment. You might have to ask that question every Big Red Rage.
Well, it's also 21-year-old B.J. Ojulari looking at nearly 40-year-old Matt Prater, so I don't know if that has something to do with it. Like,
what are you trying to say 40 is? I mean, is that some kind of implication there, Paul?
Don't look at me. I can't relate to 40 at this
point. Me neither.
It's like, look, it's like if someone were to ask me, I would say the two of you, right? The age difference, sitting here by the two of you. It's like Dani and BJ, Matt Prater, the two of you. That's a compliment, Darren. Don't look at me that way.
Sounds like a good time to bring up again that Dani will be on the sideline, and there's rain in the forecast, and it's expected to be cold. Not unlike the last time the Cardinals played in Chicago in 2021.
That's also true.
We got rained on the entire game down there.
So I didn't travel to that game, and I remember when you came back and showed me your notebook. I just felt so bad for you, Paul.
Not fun, no. But you know what I remember the most in that game, though, was the one-handed grab by James Conner. The one-handed grab,
was pretty awesome.
And the coaching staff trailing him all the way down the sideline, sprinting after him, just euphoric that he made that sort of ridiculous catch. There was also the fourth down touchdown pass where Kyler just threw it up at the pylon for D-Hop.
He made it early in the game.
Catch. Yeah, that was just
where everybody's like, "Why are you going for this?
Right,
kick the field goal."
Right, the audacity of the play call and then the play choice. Right, shun the field goal, go for the end zone, and then you're going to call that play, and they converted it. So. We'll see what the Bears are all about here.
Are you nervous at all, Paul? I mean, I know you've done this before in the regular season, but are you nervous at all? And if not, can we get you there?
There's always serious trepidation when I fill in for Dave Pash. Pash calls more games in a week than I do all year, okay? He's a top 5 play-by-play man on the planet. So all the haters on Twitter, go easy, okay? I'm certainly no Paulie Pash. He makes it look and sound really easy. I'm here to prove it isn't. Capiche?
Capiche.
So we'll see. I got a lot of work ahead of me here before
You're going to travel
Sunday night.
Not home, but travel to a familiar place.
Yeah, I already got some places picked out. We'll see if I can drag Wolf's Keister over to Twin Anchors for some ribs. We're going to do that. It's been there since the 30s. It's a rib joint over in the Old Town area, and so I might do that. We'll see. I don't know, maybe some deep dish. You could do deep dish for breakfast on Sunday before the game. It's a late kick.
I can have like one slice of deep dish, and that's good for the year for me.
Good for the year.
So maybe this is.
I have really slow digestion.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite.
So
it's too much for me.
Okay. All right. So, Danny, you good? Forget about me being nervous. Danny, you
know what? I've got my coat, Paul.
Okay,
I'm going to be fine. I'm going to try and dress
Full
warmly.
Danny's jacket.
I need to get, I know they make hand warmers. I need to get like foot warmers. That's what I'm most worried about.
Why don't
is
you
my
just buy
toes my toes go numb so fast. Is that a thing? Is that like a legit, I don't know.
Can't you just get the hand warmers and stick them in your shoes?
No, I think they make some that are for your shoes. I don't know that that's safe to be walking around on hand warmers.
Probably not, but I wouldn't do it. I'm going to be in the press box, so I won't have to worry about
it. Yeah, you're fine.
So I'll leave you with these parting words. Somebody tweeted at me. It was earlier this year. I forget what the game was. I was probably whining about the weather, and he said, "Hey, Calvisi, for the December games coming up, my German coworkers have a saying: there's no bad weather. There's just bad clothes."
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground.
We'll get you that picture of Danny's jacket.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everyone.
It'll have its own seat on Redbird 1.